we got another spooky reaction to add to that spooktacular playlist with 5 disturbing mysteries from offshore platforms and oil rigs by Dark5. His intro is iconic. I've actually loved watching some of his content.
The last days of Stalin's Atlantis. They say the city moves when no one's watching. Rust groans in the wind. A bridge collapses into the sea, and no one hears it but the ghosts. In winter, entire buildings vanish in the night, torn away by storms, with workers still inside. It doesn't show up in Google Maps. It's hidden from modern satellite imagery. And yet, 34 miles off the coast of Azerbaijan, in the middle of the Caspian Sea, something built to last forever is slowly being devoured by the waves. Its name is Neftashlan, oil rocks. It was Stalin's floating dream, and its end is coming.
So this kind of reminds me of just a floating version of the Soviet closed off cities. I don't remember what the term for those is, right? Where they'll have a city and like the whole purpose of a city is to be that thing. I think Chernobyl was one of them, was it not? It's a very closed off city, right? It's its own ecosystem. But this reminds me of just this on the water. So I'm curious if this is artificial or if this is on some sort of like just like underwater like volcano or something like that. Because as I believe, is it UAE or is it Saudi Arabia? They've proven and they've shown that it is very expensive and resource intensive to artificially make islands. I think China has done that to its extent as well, right? It is very, very cost prohibitive to make islands.
In 1949, engineers struck oil. 3,600 feet beneath the black reef sailors once called Chernyakhamny. That night, no one slept. They smeared the thick black gold across their faces like war paint.
Yeah.
Soon, the Soviets sunk the Zoroaster, the world's first oil tanker, along with 6 other ships, and built the world's first offshore drilling platform atop the
Chernobyl was the power plant, Pripyat was the city. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I definitely got that wrong.
hulls. Then they kept building. By the 1960s, oil rocks had morphed into a 17-acre labyrinth of steel, concrete, and timber. Over 2,000 rigs dotted a 19-mile circle. Roads, nearly 200 miles of them, linked bridges to 9-story dormitories, cinemas, bakeries, even a tree-lined park. Soil was barged in. Lemons grew. Movies played. At its height, Neftashlan was home to 5,000 workers who lived for weeks at sea in a self-contained Stalinist utopia.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so this does remind me of the closed-off city a little bit then, especially when you have all these amenities and all of this is very insular.
Thundering with the sounds of trucks and drills. In 1971, the Soviets placed their dream onto a commemorative postage stamp, represented by a road over water racing toward a red sun. But no utopia lasts forever, especially not one built on water and oil. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Neftashlan began to unravel. New oil fields elsewhere made the city obsolete. The bridges crumbled. Apartments flooded to the second story. Less than 30 miles of the roads are now passable. The rest have collapsed into the sea. Today, fewer than 2,500 workers remain, rotating in and out. Pay is higher than onshore, but so is the danger. Winters are particularly brutal.
I would assume winters would be awful here, especially if you were to fall overboard on this. Like, you definitely see that this has fallen into disrepair. And, like, obviously, like, stateside, right? At least in the U.S., this is why we do have things like OSHA. Obviously, Soviet Union going into Soviet Union bankruptcy, into modern Russia, right? So, OSHA's not probably necessarily a thing, right? But, I mean, this is an interesting relic from the Soviet Union.
A worker once compared it to being a kamikaze pilot. During storms, sleet lashes the face like shrapnel. Winds cut through steel. In December 2015, hurricane-force 90-mile-per-hour winds pummeled the Caspian for nearly 27 hours straight. Waves climbed over 32 feet high.
Yikes.
At Neftashlan, a small worker cabin was torn clean off the platform and disappeared into the Black Sea, taking 3 men with it. That same night, at platform number 10 of the Gunashi field, another disaster unfolded. A gas pipeline exploded, setting off a fire that forced dozens of workers into lifeboats. One of the cables snapped in the storm, slamming the boat into the platform and sending 33 men into the water. Most were never seen again.
I mean, that's wild. Like, if your job just entails that. But I mean, like, we also have like saturation divers who go like really deep down, especially when you're dealing with pressure. That's definitely a very dangerous profession. I'm sure working on oil rigs and stuff like jobs come with their own inherent risks, right? But like, yeah, this is why people who want to do things like saturation diving and stuff are very well compensated.
And yet the oil still flows, just enough to justify its survival. Tearing it down would cost more than keeping it going.
Right. It's why
the ghost city persists, half forgotten and cloaked in secrecy. The Azerbaijani government guards Nefteshlan fiercely, and outsiders rarely glimpse its crumbling reality.
Mm-hmm.
Some speak of converting the city into a luxury resort. Others dream of a museum. But as rust consumes steel, the storms intensify. It seems inevitable the Caspian will reclaim its own.
I think that's wild, especially because it said they sank boats in order to build the basis for this and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know what the decay rate, the rust rate, etc. I don't know how fast that works for boats down there, but that is definitely an interesting thing to think about, right? Very interesting to consider. Just the structure has a time limit on it, right? And that's, if people want to turn it to a museum, people want to turn it into even a resort, but like time is definitely working against it. It's an interesting relic that wasn't reef in some parts. It might have been. I might have missed that if I'm being completely honest. It's an interesting relic from the Soviet era. And one of the other pieces, much like I think Kazakhstan has to deal with Vazir-Zdania, right? Uralsk 7, how other countries have had to kind of just deal with remnants of the Soviet Union, right? Interesting bit of history I honestly didn't know about. Like, that's super cool that this exists. But like, yeah, like what do you do with something like that?
Sea Lab 3. At 5:15 a.m. on February 17th, 1969, a grainy black and white monitor aboard a U.S. Navy command barge flickered with the image of a body convulsing in the deep.
Hmm?
Below, at 610 feet off the coast of San Clemente Island, aquanaut Barry Cannon was dying. His limbs thrashed as fellow diver Bob Barth struggled to jam a mouthpiece between his clenched teeth. What none of them knew, what only the autopsy would later reveal, was that Cannon's breathing system was missing the one substance meant to keep him alive.
Oxygen?
Berylime, the chemical that scrubs carbon dioxide from the air. The canister was empty, and no one ever explained why. Sea Lab 3 was meant to be the crowning achievement of the Navy's grand experiment in underwater colonization.
So that's actually really interesting, because doesn't the Navy, the Navy specifically, has procedures for everything, right? Like, if you want to know how to flush a toilet on a submarine, if you want to know how something, there's pages of procedures, right? So how does something like that get past all of that?
A Cold War-era moonshot for the ocean floor. But from the beginning, it was plagued by delays, mishaps, and an eerie sense that something was very wrong.
Mm-hmm.
A neoprene seal leaked helium. Equipment failed in baffling succession. Divers stayed awake for 20 hours, hopped up on amphetamines to make emergency repairs.
Wow.
When Cannon went down that morning, he drew one of 4 pre-packed rebreathers stored inside the personnel transfer capsule. By sheer chance, he picked the one rig that had never been filled. That's where the mystery begins. Reports initially claimed Cannon had suffered a heart attack, but the official autopsy uncovered a darker story. He'd suffocated on his own exhaled breath. Then things got stranger. According to Navy Deep Submergence Director John Pena Craven, attempts were made to sabotage the decompression chamber holding Cannon's surviving teammates.
Hmm? By who?
Craven claimed that their air supply had been tampered with. Guards were posted. A suspect, a Navy man described by the staff psychiatrist as unstable, was quietly removed. No charges were ever filed. The incident was buried in the wake of the USS Pueblo incident, which saw 1 U.S. sailor killed and 82 captured. When North
I don't know of this incident.
Korea attacked a research vessel that had been converted into a spy ship. Some believed the culprit harbored a grudge. Others believed it was Cold War espionage. And a growing number now suspect Cannon's death wasn't just negligence, it was murder. Sea Lab 3 was hauled from the ocean, stripped for parts, and abandoned. The dream of a permanent American presence on the sea floor dissolved into helium leaks, missing chemicals, and silence. Cannon's name faded with it, just another casualty of an era racing towards space and leaving its deep-sea dead behind. But the question still bubbles up from the dark. Who killed Barry Cannon? And
That's
why,
kind of wild.
600 feet below the surface, did one of America's most secretive scientific missions begin to feel more like a haunted house?
I mean, this is very Cold War, right? Yeah, like even before he said it was the Cold War, right? This feels very Cold War, right? And it's hard to really know anything that comes out from that era unless, we have documentation to support it, right? Like MK Ultra, modern art, as the fat electrician would say. Yeah, I mean, modern art being a CIA psyop just makes sense if I'm being completely honest. I don't know. It's really hard because, like, at that point, especially if there is no official arrest, charges, statements, right? Maybe there's someone that knows. Maybe no one knows. It's hard to really say, and you kind of have to put on your tinfoil hat to really come to any sort of conclusion. But that's also done, I feel, in a disrespectful capacity, right? Because, like, at the end of the day, like, it was still someone who tragically lost their life, and speculating on that does feel a tad inappropriate. But that's wild. That's wild that this even happened. If I'm being completely honest, like that is. Yeah, that is Cold War. That's Cold War era.
Signals of Glomar Java Sea. On October 27th, 1983, 2 days after the drill ship Glomar Java Sea capsized in the raging typhoon Lex, a cargo ship sailing near Vietnam received an eerie Morse code transmission crackling through on the 500 kilohertz frequency. It contained the ship's exact call sign, WFDS, and precise coordinates, 70 nautical miles from where the Glomar Java Sea had vanished beneath monstrous waves. The ship was long gone, but its voice had somehow survived. Built in 1975, the Glomar Java Sea was a state-of-the-art drill ship owned by Glomar Marine and leased to Arco, drilling off the Chinese coast in a joint venture with Beijing. At over 5,900 tons, it was a floating city, outfitted with 2 64-man enclosed lifeboats, several smaller rafts, emergency beacons, and multiple redundant radios. It was also the sister ship of the Glomar Explorer, the covert CIA platform that once fished a Soviet submarine off the Pacific floor. The ship had been drilling for oil in the treacherous waters off Hainan Island when the storm struck. By the evening of October 25th, monstrous swells battered the vessel.
I mean, considering that this right, it was a drilling ship converted into a CIA spy ship. This kind of just makes me wonder what the modern CIA is up to. Not that anyone would either confirm or deny anything. Not that we'd ever have any sort of confirmation outside of what a FOIA request for Information Act, right? And even then, that could just still be released with a bunch of black ink on it, right? I know there's certain things that like go into that. I'm not an expert on that by any means, but it really makes you wonder, right? Like what. We always want to say, like, how are mattress stores still in business? Are the CIA operating mattress stores? Are they the ones that enforce if you remove your tag from your mattress? All I'm saying, that'd make a lot of sense. It's obviously sarcasm. It just makes you think what escalation they've had because they did things like Operation Midnight Climax, MK Ultra, things like this, right? Modern art. What are they responsible for in modernity? Crypto, maybe? That would be an interesting one if they had a hand in crypto, like the actual creation of it. Like, oh god, who's the big dude with crypto? Bitcoin. It's the dude with the Japanese name, Satoshi Nakamoto, who no one, as far as I was aware, actually doesn't know like who he is. Just not just CIA. That would make that. You could tell me that was the entirety of crypto was a CIA psyop, and that would just make sense to me.
At 11:48 p.m., her assistant rig manager shouted into a satellite phone to the company's vice president in Houston. Winds over 75 knots.
Actually, that's another point to make. If you accuse the CIA of doing something, can you get in trouble for that? Because, like, what is it? Because you can and can't do certain things, right? Like obviously impersonate. Well, how do I word that? No, because how would 1A work? How would 1A work against the CIA? Because, like, you what is it? You have freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and the U.S. government can't come after you. I'm trying to think of this from a legal sense. But, like, if you say something and the CIA retaliates on you, or they, put you in a funny van and take you to some basement somewhere, is that technically breaking 1A? Now they get proof. I mean, I guess that's fair as well, because just because of who and what the CIA is, realistically, it's like you could, it also obvious. So even if there was a whistleblower, let's say, I don't know, that the CIA was in operation of World of Warcraft or something like that, who would believe you, right? Like, because of who and what the CIA is, it kind of obfuscates itself, right? Like, no, that just either makes sense or people just kind of hand wave it, right? It's kind of perfect when you think about it. Like, even actual correct information getting out there is kind of written off.
Seas rising, a 15-degree starboard list. The call cut off suddenly, mid-sentence. Minutes later, the massive vessel capsized, taking 81 souls down with her. Yet here was its ghostly echo, 36 hours later, carried impossibly far. Investigators concluded that this message must have come from survivors aboard a lifeboat. The ship's portable radio required human hands to operate.
Mm-hmm.
Another haunting detail emerged. Earlier that day, commercial airliners reported intermittent distress signals on the emergency frequency 121.5 megahertz, originating far from the ship's known emergency beacon. Officials dismissed it as a coincidence, deeming the signals impossibly far from the last known location of the Glomar Java Sea. Still, the unsettling idea persisted. Someone was alive out there, calling desperately into the void. Then the sightings began. On October 28th, a rescue helicopter sent by the company spotted an overturned white lifeboat with its propeller showing, but no visible survivors, about 40 miles away from the 500 kilohertz SOS message. A smaller empty life raft was recovered in the area, but the lifeboat was never found again. On October 29th, a rescue aircraft reported finding survivors in the water near coordinates matching those radioed from the ghostly transmission. Dye markers, strobe lights from life jackets, frantic signals from the drifting souls below. A raft was dropped. Help seemed close. A rescue ship was just half a mile away, but inexplicably, no rescue was ever made. Months later, divers exploring the wreckage of the Glomar Java Sea discovered a disturbing scene. A lifeboat was indeed missing, presumably launched in desperation as the ship foundered. They recovered only a fraction of the crew from the seabed mud. Investigators suggested the missing lifeboat may have been launched but swamped during the storm. The lifeboat's radio required opening an access hatch to rig an antenna, likely dooming any survivors who had managed to escape, exposing them to the ferocity of the sea. Officially, the search ended with no survivors. But rumors persisted of a lifeboat drifting into Vietnamese waters near Hongyo Island, just beyond the reach of rescue teams. Speculation grew from there. Imprisonment in Vietnamese POW camps. Sabotage, a cover-up buried beneath politics and waves. Each theory was more disturbing than the last. Nearly 4 decades later, the ghostly call of the Glomar Java Sea still haunts the static. Did the survivors vanish beneath the storm, or behind the bars of a secret cell? Only the chilling truth remains. Someone called for help, and no one came.
I mean, I think it's interesting to think about, right? And I mean, this is something that like maybe someone knows, maybe no one knows. I mean, from pieces put together, from seeming willingness to just avoid survivors, right, and not rescue, it seems like there was something more afoot, especially if this is Cold War era, right? It truly is hard to know, right? Because, and I wonder if cause we've talked about in the past how deterrence policy from the Cold War, right, mutually assured destruction leading into deterrence policy, how that's kind of bled into modern day, not really even politics so much as it's like modern day, like how people act, right? Like you ask a business, okay, what part of my terms of service says this, right? And they'll just lip service you. They won't actually provide you any information, even though you click wrappered it, right? Or your seller doesn't give you the correct item, and then oh, we'll just give you a refund. It's like, I don't want the refund, I want the thing. And it's just a deterrence policy, right? This makes me wonder if the Cold War just kind of broke people. Kind of not dissimilar to what the unspecified virus of unknown origins did, right? How that just kind of broke people. It makes me wonder what other long-lasting impacts from the Cold War persist into current day.
Soviet nuclear lighthouses. There's a tower on the edge of the world, standing on a jagged rock in the Sea of Okhotsk that hums with secrets. Weather-beaten and ghost gray, the Aniva lighthouse is beautiful, but haunted. The Soviets left something behind in its bones. Not a ghost, something that glowed. Built by Japanese engineers in 1939, it guided ships through waters so dangerous that fog, ice, and underwater currents once claimed entire convoys. According to the lore of local fishermen, the icy waters hungered for human souls. After
that is a very human conclusion to come to.
World War II, the Soviet Union took full control of Sakhalin Island, inheriting the beacon now known as Aniva. In the 1970s, as Soviet maritime ambitions surged along the Arctic and Pacific coastlines, they faced a logistical problem. How do you power a lighthouse in a place where no one can live? The answer came not from sailors, but from space scientists. Borrowing technology developed for satellites, Soviet engineers began installing radioisotope thermoelectric generators, RTGs, nuclear batteries that ran on decaying strontium-90, glowing with invisible heat. The result was a chain of hundreds of structures that came to be known chillingly as nuclear lighthouses. Each one stood alone, untouched by human hands for decades, silently marking the coldest, darkest corners of Soviet territory.
I mean, it's very imposing, right? Especially as age, wear and tear takes its toll on these. Like, it definitely feels like very much ghostly markers of the Soviet Union, like Soviet borders, right?
Aniva was among the most legendary. 9 stories tall, housing its own sleeping quarters, radio room, and a mercury-floated lens that once threw light 19 nautical miles. Originally a crude lighthouse, maintenance proved nearly impossible. Storms battered the isolated tower, and bitter cold corroded metal doors and rusted staircases into skeletal shapes. In 1990, the last crew departed, and an autonomous RTG system was installed. By 2006, the RTG was removed when the nuclear batteries were depleted, and the lighthouse finally went dark.
Wow.
But elsewhere, the danger didn't. After the fall of the USSR, many of these nuclear lighthouses were abandoned without decommissioning. Looters came, searching for copper or curiosity.
No!
Some didn't understand what the radiation warning signs meant.
No!
Others ignored them.
It's like the, what was it? I think Plainly Difficult had a video. The South American, it was an incident in South America that ended up happening. A hospital fell into disrepair. Nobody could quite figure out who owned the property because it was in a property dispute. Somebody took one of the like MRI machines or something like that and cracked it open. I think it was Cobalt 60. And that stuff just got everywhere. That was a huge incident. Like this. Yeah, this doesn't surprise me.
In one case, Men carried an exposed RTG core on their backs, unaware that the battery was slowly cooking their spines. Some lighthouses were cracked open like tombs. Others were simply forgotten. 2 RTGs, each the size of a washing machine and weighing over 2.5 tons, were dropped from helicopters into the sea off Sakhalin during bungled military transport operations.
Oh no!
Each of them contained 1.5 million curies of radiation. More than all.
What happens if that, like, you just drop the nuclear device? Is that an oops moment? Just like, oops? Like, how much paperwork is that?
All the solid nuclear waste dumped by the US, UK, and Japan from 1946 to 1972. One was found years later, buried under 100 feet of seawater and silt. The other remains lost. Today, Aniva stands empty, but not silent. Groans in the wind, a gray skeleton wrapped in rust and seagulls. Adventurers still make the 2-hour boat trip and climb the crumbling stairs, past lead-lined rooms and walls where instruments once ticked with decay. They go for the thrill, for the view, for the story. But few know that beneath their feet, for decades, pulsed a heart of glowing strontium, quiet, hot, and waiting.
I would do it. I would go to places like this. Like, obviously, the cost is a big thing, right? Like, if I had F-off money, I would go to places like this. I'd go to places like, what? Hoska Castle. I think that's in Germany. That's one place I would go. I'd go to abandoned structures like this 100%. I honestly thought it was great. In fact,
Fire in the Sky, MH370. The night sky above an oil rig in the South China Sea is vast, cold, and usually empty. But on the early morning of March 8th, 2014, Mike McKay, a drilling consultant aboard the rig Sangha Makur, witnessed something that would haunt him for the rest of his life. McKay, a veteran rig worker from New Zealand, stood on the steel deck 200 miles off the coast of Vung Tau, Vietnam. It was there, under the blanket of stars, that he noticed something disturbing. An aircraft on fire, blazing high in the sky. For 10 harrowing seconds, he watched flames engulf the plane, illuminating it in ghastly silhouette, yet eerily remaining intact. And then suddenly, the fire vanished, plunging the object into darkness. What McKay could not have known was that at that very moment, Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370, a Boeing 777 carrying 239 passengers and crew, had inexplicably vanished from radar. The flight, en route from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing, had entered aviation history's greatest mystery.
Right, okay.
McKay's chilling observation.
I vaguely heard of this. I forgot what it was. I've forgotten most of the situation. I vaguely remember hearing about this, though.
Precisely documented with coordinates and compass bearings, would soon thrust him into the eye of a global storm. At 6:24 a.m. on March 12, 2014, McKay sent a short email to his supervisors at the Sangha Makur oil rig, anchored some 186 miles southeast of Vung Tau, Vietnam. "Gentlemen," he wrote, "I believe I saw the Malaysian Airlines plane come down." He included coordinates, weather conditions, and a compass bearing, 265 to 275 degrees, where he'd seen the object burning high in the sky. Instead of answers, he received silence. Days passed. When his messages finally leaked to the media, his life quickly unraveled. Swamped by relentless calls, the rig company found the scrutiny unbearable. McKay was abruptly terminated, forced from the rig, and blacklisted from returning.
That's wild, considering, like, he literally sent it up to his supervisors, and his supervisors literally did nothing with the information, right? That's so wild that it becomes your fault for your supervisors either just ignoring it or choosing not to deal with it. That is wild.
The oil patch, he would later say bitterly, is a rough, unforgiving game. Yet despite McKay's careful observations, authorities found nothing when they searched the location he pinpointed. No debris, no oil slick, nothing. His account joined a growing list of unconfirmed sightings. A British sailor describing an aircraft ablaze near Thailand, fishermen off Malaysia seeing a jet skimming the clouds, islanders in the Maldives noticing a strangely low-flying plane. Each story adding to the confusion was swiftly dismissed by officials. Today, more than a decade after the disappearance, MH370 remains lost. A ghost plane drifting in the dark imagination of the world. Mike McKay still insists on what he saw, his life permanently scarred by those fleeting, fiery seconds.
I mean, it's kind of wild, right? It's definitely kind of
What's the
wild.
creepiest thing you can imagine seeing on an offshore oil rig? Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you for watching Dark5. Like and subscribe to continue exploring the greatest mysteries of this world and beyond.
It's wild to think about, like, it's as interconnected as the modern world is, right? Globalization, as many eyes and ears, the recording devices we've seen. It is kind of wild to think that there are just mysteries that still persist. Obviously, like, this seems like this is a while ago, right? I don't know the exact time frame. But I mean, even today, like, stuff can happen and there's not really a conclusion or solution. And people want solutions, right? People want, this is the story you have to tell from the beginning, the middle, and the end, right? But sometimes there just isn't a beginning and middle. Well, there's a beginning and a middle, right? But there's not necessarily an end. And, it's hard for people to be invested in someone's story if there's not a definitive end. And I think that's why a lot of people won't share certain accounts with each other. Obviously, if they're shared in good faith, right? Not trying to just troll each other. I thought this was good, though. I liked this. I thought this was a really cool video. It was really cool to look some history in this. Figured it got me a little bit of the Spooktober mood. Some things to add to the Spooktacular playlist. Honestly, a lot of fun with this. Hopefully you did as well. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Dark5, for another amazing video. I honestly love this, and I will see you all in the next one.